The twisted metal of the SUV gleamed under flashes of lightning, steam hissing from the crumpled hood as rain began to pound the mountain road. Scattered across the steep ravine lay shattered glass, a child's stuffed animal, and 30 feet from the wreckage a baby car seat with its tiny occupant still strapped inside, motionless but miraculously intact. Max emerged from the tree line, his German shepherd form alert, ears forward, muscles tense beneath his reins, slick coat. The former rescue dog approached cautiously, nostrils flaring at the metallic scent of blood mixed with gasoline. His training, buried beneath months of wilderness survival, stirred in his memory. When he reached the infant, time seemed to freeze. 1-year-old Noah's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Another crack of lightning illuminated the wreckage where no other survivors moved. In that moment, Max made a decision that defied all natural instinct. He carefully gripped the baby's blanket in his teeth and began to pull, just as the first flames licked at the overturned vehicle behind them. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. The Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina stood majestic and formidable, their ancient peaks shrouded in mist on that fateful spring morning. The winding roads cut through dense forests of oak, maple, and pine, creating a picturesque but treacherous drive for visitors unfamiliar with the sharp turns and steep grades. April had brought unpredictable weather to the mountain's sunshine one moment, violent thunderstorms the next, making the already challenging terrain even more dangerous. Local rangers often warned tourists about flash floods and landslides that could transform these serene mountains into death traps within minutes. The Anderson family had been heading to their rented cabin for a long-awaited vacation. James Anderson, 35, a dedicated surgeon from Charlotte, had finally managed to take a week off after months of grueling hospital shifts. His wife, Sarah, 33, an elementary school teacher with a warm smile and patient demeanor, had spent weeks planning activities for their mountain retreat. In the back seat, 10-year-old Emily had been engrossed in her book, occasionally looking up to point out wildlife to her baby brother. 1-year-old Noah, securely fastened in his car seat, had been drifting in and out of sleep, clutching the stuffed lion that never left his side. They were the perfect image of a loving American family, hardworking parents trying to balance careers with quality family time, a bright, curious daughter, and a cherubic son whose first steps had been proudly recorded just 2 weeks earlier. Unknown to them, their paths would cross with that of Max, a 5-year-old German shepherd who once served with distinction in the county search and rescue unit. Max had been the star of his team until the cave-in incident 8 months ago when he failed to locate a hiker in time. His handler, devastated by the loss and facing budget cuts, had abandoned Max in these very mountains, unable to face the daily reminder of their failure. The once proud rescue dog had been surviving on his own, growing leaner and warier, his trained disciplines giving way to wild instincts. The scar across his right flank told of battles with other predators, while his still muscular frame spoke of his resilience. In his amber eyes, though, remained the intelligence and compassion that had once made him exceptional at finding and saving human lives, a purpose that would soon find him again in the most unexpected way. The Anderson family's SUV navigated the winding mountain road as rain began to fall, gentle at first, then increasingly insistent. James Anderson gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, his knuckles whitening as he slowed for another hairpin turn. The weather forecast had predicted clear skies, and this sudden change concerned him. In the passenger seat, Sarah consulted the GPS, confirming they had only 15 more miles until they reached their rented cabin. "Are we almost there, Mom?" Emily called from the back seat, momentarily looking up from her dog-eared copy of The Secret Garden. "Soon, honey," Sarah replied, turning to offer a reassuring smile. "Maybe another half hour, depending on this rain." Noah had awakened from his nap and was babbling happily, pointing at raindrops racing down his window. Sarah reached back to readjust his blanket, her maternal instincts always alert to his comfort. "I don't like the look of those clouds," James muttered, nodding toward the darkening sky ahead. Thunder rumbled in the distance, an ominous warning. "Should we pull over?" Sarah asked, her voice tinged with concern. James shook his head. "Better to get to the cabin before this really hits." The road might wash out if we wait too long. It was a decision he would never have the chance to reconsider. As they rounded the next bend, a massive logging truck appeared, moving too fast in the opposite direction. The driver, Michael Reeves, had been working double shifts for days trying to meet impossible quotas. His fatigue-clouded judgment made him cut the corner too sharply. James swerved instinctively, avoiding a head-on collision, but the evasive action sent their SUV toward the guardrail. James. Sarah screamed, her hand reaching for his as the tires lost traction on the rain-slicked asphalt. The vehicle crashed through the guardrail with a sickening screech of metal. Time seemed to slow as the SUV became airborne. Emily's book flew from her hands. Noah's stuffed lion tumbled through the air. The family screams merged with the cacophony of breaking glass and bending metal as the vehicle rolled down the steep embankment. When the SUV finally came to rest, upside down in the ravine, an unnatural silence fell, broken only by the steady drumming of rain and the distant rumble of thunder. Michael had slammed on his brakes, but it took nearly a quarter-mile for the loaded truck to stop. Shaking with adrenaline and fear, he climbed from his cab and ran back toward the broken guardrail, his cell phone already in hand as he dialed 911. "There's been an accident on Highway 19. About 10 miles east of Riverview," he reported, his voice cracking. "A family, their SUV went over the edge. Please hurry." But Michael couldn't bring himself to climb down the treacherous slope in the intensifying storm. His cowardice would haunt him in the days to come. Half a mile away, Max's sensitive ears perked up at the distant crash. The German Shepherd had been sheltering under a rocky overhang, his instincts warning him of the approaching storm. The sound triggered something deep in his training, a response he couldn't ignore despite the months of fending for himself in these mountains. He emerged from his shelter, his powerful body alert as he moved toward the source of the disturbance. The rain fell in earnest now, plastering his fur to his muscular frame as he loped through the forest. His paws found purchase on slippery rocks and muddy terrain that would have challenged a human rescuer. When he reached the crash site, Max paused at the edge of the clearing, assessing the scene with the caution of a wild animal. The overturned SUV lay partially crushed, its frame distorted beyond recognition. Max approached warily, his nostrils flaring at the scent of gasoline, blood, and something else, a hint of electrical fire that his training told him signaled imminent danger. He circled the vehicle once, his instincts conflicting. The wild part of him urged retreat from this human disaster, but his deeply ingrained training compelled him to search for survivors. A soft whimper, almost imperceptible, caught his attention. Max froze, ears swiveling to pinpoint the sound. It hadn't come from the mangled vehicle, but from further down the slope. Following the scent and sound, he discovered the baby car seat that had been ejected from the SUV during its violent tumble. By some miracle of engineering and chance, the car seat had done its job, cradling 1-year-old Noah in its protective embrace. Max approached cautiously, sniffing at the small human. The infant's eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but steady. A small cut on his forehead had left a trickle of blood, but he appeared otherwise unharmed. The German Shepherd nudged the baby gently with his nose, a behavior learned from his search and rescue days to check for responsiveness. Noah stirred slightly but didn't wake. A sudden explosion rocked the ravine as the SUV's fuel tank ignited. Max instinctively crouched protectively over the car seat, his body shielding the infant from flying debris. When he raised his head again, flames were consuming the vehicle and with it, any hope for the other occupants. The former rescue dog understood fire. He knew the danger would spread in this dry underbrush despite the rain. He had to move the baby to safety. But how? His training had never covered transporting infants. Acting on instinct, Max gently gripped the blanket still partially tucked around Noah. He tested the fabric with a gentle tug, making sure it was secure enough to move the baby without harming him. Satisfied, Max began the delicate task of dragging the car seat away from the burning wreckage. Each step was measured, each pull gentle but deliberate. The steep terrain made his task difficult, and several times he had to readjust his grip when the blanket began to slip. The storm intensified around them, lightning illuminating their precarious journey in stark flashes. Max knew these mountains intimately after months of surviving in them. He headed toward a small cave he had used for shelter during previous storms, located about half a mile from the crash site. The journey would normally take him minutes, but with his precious cargo, it took nearly an hour of careful navigation. The cave entrance was narrow but opened into a space large enough for both of them. Dry leaves and pine needles carpeted the floor, remnants of Max's previous occupancy. He pulled the car seat to the back of the cave, where the infant would be protected from the wind and rain. Only then did Max release the blanket and step back to assess his charge. Noah remained unconscious, his small chest rising and falling with each breath. The blood from his forehead cut had dried, but he was soaked from the rain and beginning to shiver. Max remembered his training. Humans needed warmth, especially small ones. He hesitated only a moment before lying down next to the car seat, pressing his warm body against it. His actions were no longer guided by training alone, but by something deeper, more primal, a protective instinct that transcended his wild existence of the past months. Outside, the storm raged. Inside the cave, an unlikely guardian settled in for a long night, his amber eyes fixed on the small human he had chosen to save. Max didn't understand the concept of destiny, but if he had, he might have recognized this moment as the redemption he never knew. He sought a second chance to fulfill the purpose for which he had been trained, to find and protect human life, even at the cost of his own. As Noah's shivering subsided, Max rested his head on his paws but remained vigilant. Something fundamental had shifted in his wild existence. He was once again a rescue dog with a mission, perhaps the most important one of his life. And though he couldn't know what challenges the coming days would bring, one thing was certain: he would not abandon this small human until he was safe. Dawn broke over the mountains, pale light filtering through the cave entrance where Max had maintained his vigilant watch through the night. The German Shepherd rose stiffly, shaking his damp coat before checking on his small charge. Noah had slept fitfully, occasionally whimpering but never fully waking. The infant's cheeks were flushed warmer than they should be, and Max recognized the signs of developing fever from his rescue training. The baby needed more than just shelter. He needed proper care that Max could only partially provide. The immediate priority was making their temporary refuge more comfortable and secure. Max ventured just outside the cave, gathering more dry leaves and pine needles in his mouth. He made multiple trips, building a thick, insulating nest around the car seat. His rescue training had included sessions on wilderness survival for both handler and victim, knowledge that was serving him well now. He arranged the natural materials strategically, creating a barrier against the cave's natural draft while ensuring the baby remained visible and accessible. When Noah began to stir more actively, Max returned to his side. The infant's eyes fluttered open, revealing blue irises clouded with confusion and fear. His first cries were weak, more whimpers than wails, but they grew stronger as full consciousness returned. Max responded instinctively, gently nuzzling the baby's hand with his nose. The contact seemed to startle Noah at first, but as Max remained perfectly still, allowing the infant to become accustomed to his presence, the cries gradually subsided. Noah reached out with uncoordinated movements, his tiny fingers finding purchase in Max's thick fur. The dog remained motionless, allowing this exploration. It was a critical moment in establishing trust, the kind of patience Max had been trained to exhibit with traumatized victims. When Noah's grip tightened painfully on his ear, Max merely winced but didn't pull away. Water would be their next challenge. Max could hear the gurgle of a small stream not far from the cave, one of the reasons he had chosen this shelter in the first place. But he couldn't leave Noah alone for long, nor could he carry the baby safely over the rough terrain. He faced a dilemma that tested both his training and instincts. The solution came in the form of a large, curved piece of tree bark that had blown into the cave entrance during the night storm. Max carefully gripped it between his teeth and carried it to the stream. He submerged it briefly, then balanced it carefully as he returned to the cave with a small amount of water sloshing in the natural container. It wasn't much, but it might be enough to moisten Noah's lips and provide some hydration. With extraordinary gentleness, Max set the bark container down beside the car seat and nudged it closer with his nose. Noah was crying again, likely from hunger as much as fear and discomfort. The infant couldn't reach the water himself, but when some splashed onto his hand as he flailed, he instinctively brought his fingers to his mouth. It was a small victory, not proper hydration, but a start. Max repeated this water-gathering process several times throughout the day, his movements becoming more efficient with practice. Between these excursions, he remained beside Noah, his body providing warmth, his presence offering what comfort it could to the frightened child. When Noah finally drifted back to sleep, exhausted from crying and the trauma, Max allowed himself to doze lightly, ears still alert for any signs of danger. Meanwhile, the human response to the tragedy was gaining momentum. The first responders had arrived at the crash site in the early morning hours, their grim faces reflecting the horrible task before them. The rain had stopped, but the ground remained treacherous with mud that complicated their efforts. Fire Chief Robert Daniels directed his team to secure the still smoking wreckage before beginning the search for survivors. Approach from the downhill side, he ordered, "And watch your footing. Last thing we need is another casualty." The recovery operation was methodical and heartbreaking. The bodies of James and Sarah Anderson were found first, still strapped in their seats, their lives extinguished instantly during the violent impact. 10-year-old Emily was discovered nearby, thrown from the vehicle despite her seatbelt, her book still clutched in her lifeless hand. The responders worked in somber silence, covering each victim with a respectful sheet before continuing their search. "There should be one more," Sheriff Tom Williams announced, consulting his notes from the witness statement. The truck driver reported seeing a baby carrier in the back seat. The search expanded outward from the wreckage, rescue workers combing the underbrush and scanning the ravine for any sign of the missing infant. They found the baby's stuffed lion, its plush fabric snagged on a thorn bush, but no car seat and no baby. The first flicker of hope ignited among the grim-faced rescuers. "The car seat must have been ejected. If it did its job, there's a chance," Chief Daniels stated, his voice cautiously optimistic. "Expand the search perimeter. And get the dogs out here if the baby is still alive. We're going to need their noses." By midday, the tragic news had reached William Anderson, Noah's maternal grandfather and only surviving family member. The retired Army colonel had driven 3 hours from his home in Tennessee, his weathered face set in rigid lines to mask his devastating grief. At 72, William had already buried his wife and now faced the unthinkable loss of his daughter, son-in-law, and granddaughter. Only the possibility that Noah might still be alive kept him from collapsing under the weight of his sorrow. "Show me everything," he demanded upon arrival, his military bearing evident despite his civilian clothes. "And I want to join the search parties." Sheriff Williams recognized the determination in the older man's eyes. "Mr. Anderson, I understand your need to be involved, but the terrain is treacherous even for our trained." "I've navigated jungles and deserts under enemy fire," Sheriff William interrupted. "And that's my grandson out there. I'm going." The sheriff nodded, respecting both the man's experience and his right to participate in the search for his grandson. William was quickly outfitted with a radio and paired with an experienced forest ranger who would guide him through the search grid. "We'll find him, sir," the ranger assured him. "We've got the best search and rescue teams in the state out here." William merely nodded, his eyes scanning the vast wilderness that might hold his only remaining family member. "Noah's a fighter," he said quietly, "just like his grandmother was. If there's any chance at all, he'll hang on until we reach him." As the afternoon wore on, the search team spread further into the surrounding forest. Their shouted calls of Noah echoed through the mountains, creating a surreal chorus of hope and desperation. The search dogs worked diligently, but the previous night's heavy rain had washed away many scents, hampering their effectiveness. None of the searchers realized that less than 2 miles away, Another dog was already fulfilling their mission. Max had established a rudimentary care routine for Noah, alternating between gathering water, maintaining their nest of leaves, and providing companionship and warmth. The infant's fever was concerning, and his cries had grown weaker as hunger took its toll, but he was alive, a miracle in itself given the circumstances. During one of his water-gathering trips, Max's keen ears picked up the distant sounds of the search parties. The shouted name meant nothing to him, but the human voices triggered memories of his former life. For a moment he stood frozen by the stream, torn between his wild instinct to avoid humans and his trained response to seek them out. The whimper from the cave decided him the baby's needs came first, and Max returned to Noah with water and renewed determination. He would continue to care for the infant as best he could, but he would also need to find a way to alert the searchers to their location. His training included signaling techniques, but without his handler to direct him, he would have to rely on instinct and opportunity. As night fell on the first full day since the accident, the official search was temporarily suspended until morning. William Anderson refused to return to the command post, insisting on continuing with his flashlight despite the rangers' concerns about nighttime hazards. "Sir, we understand your feelings, but searching in the dark is dangerous and ineffective," the lead ranger explained gently. "We'll resume at first light with fresh teams and better visibility." "Every hour that passes reduces his chances," William argued, his voice breaking. "He's just a baby, all alone out there." What neither William nor the search teams knew was that Noah wasn't alone. In their cave shelter, Max had settled in for another night of vigilance, his body curled protectively around the car seat, his amber eyes reflecting the starlight that filtered through the entrance. The bond forming between the abandoned rescue dog and the orphaned infant transcended their difference in species. In their shared vulnerability and isolation, they had found in each other something essential. Max had rediscovered his purpose, and Noah had found the guardian he needed to survive. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Noah's hunger would become more critical, his fever might worsen, and Max would need to find a way to signal their location to the searchers. But for tonight, in their small cave sanctuary, they had what they immediately needed: shelter, minimal water, warmth, and most importantly, each other. The second day in the wilderness brought new challenges for Max and his tiny charge. Noah's cries had weakened overnight, his small body fighting the growing fever and hunger. Max sensed the increasing urgency of their situation. The baby needed more than just shelter and the minimal water he could provide. Drawing on his rescue training, the German Shepherd understood that finding food for a human infant required special knowledge beyond his capabilities. Instead, he focused on what he could control, continuing to provide water, maintaining their shelter, and keeping Noah safe from the numerous predators that roamed these mountains. Max established a routine, leaving the cave for short periods to collect water in his makeshift bark container. Each time he returned, he would gently nuzzle Noah to ensure the baby remained responsive. On his third trip to the stream, Max's acute senses detected a change in their environment, the distinctive musky odor of a black bear. The scent was fresh, indicating the predator had passed through recently, likely following the stream in search of food. Max's muscles tensed, his wild instincts recognizing the potential threat. A bear would have no difficulty following their scent back to the cave, especially with Noah's increasingly distressed cries potentially attracting attention. With deliberate care, Max began creating a perimeter of his own scent around their cave, marking trees and rocks in a wide circle. It was a technique he'd developed during his months in the wild, establishing territory boundaries to warn off other predators. Whether it would deter a determined bear remained uncertain, but it was the best defense he could create. Returning to the cave, he resumed his protective position beside Noah, ears constantly swiveling to monitor the sounds of the forest around them. As the day progressed, Noah's condition deteriorated. The baby's skin felt hot to Max's sensitive nose, and his cries had diminished to pitiful whimpers. Without the proper nourishment, Noah's small body was rapidly losing its strength to fight the fever. Max increased his water-gathering efforts, but he knew it wouldn't be enough. The responsibility weighed heavily on him, triggering memories of his last search and rescue failure, the trapped hiker he hadn't found in time. Those memories, combined with his growing attachment to Noah, intensified his protective instincts. He would not fail this time. In the early afternoon, Max's vigilance was rewarded. His ears detected the distant sound of search teams, closer than they had been the previous day but still far from their location. A complex emotion, something between hope and fear, surged through him. Humans meant help for Noah, but his months in the wild had taught him wariness. Would these humans recognize he was protecting the baby, or would they see only a feral dog to be driven away or worse? Noah's weak cry made the decision simple. Reluctantly leaving the infant's side, Max ventured out of the cave and toward the direction of the human voices. He moved cautiously through the underbrush, stopping frequently to listen and ensure he was heading in the right direction. When he had covered about half the distance between the cave and the search party, he began to bark the sharp, insistent sound he had been trained to use when locating a victim. He continued for several minutes, pouring his energy into creating a sound that would carry through the mountain valleys. Then he listened intently for any response. Nothing. The search team had moved on, their voices fading into the distance. Max's training had included perseverance. Sometimes handlers didn't hear the first alert, but he couldn't stay away from Noah for long. Reluctantly, he returned to the cave, resolving to try again when the search teams came closer. Back at the search command post, the mood was growing increasingly somber. 24 hours had passed since the accident, and experienced rescuers knew that the chances of finding a 1-year-old alive in these conditions diminished with each passing hour. The search teams had expanded their grid pattern, meticulously covering the rugged terrain, but so far there was no sign of Noah or his car seat. William Anderson refused to leave the command post except to join search parties. He had not slept, accepting only water and energy bars when pressed by concerned rangers. His military discipline kept him functioning despite his grief and exhaustion, but the strain showed in the deep lines etching his weathered face. When Sheriff Williams approached with an update, William steeled himself for the worst. "We've found something," the sheriff said, his expression cautiously hopeful. "Not the baby, but one of our teams discovered drag marks near where we believe the car seat landed. Something or someone moved it." William's heart raced. "An animal?" "Possibly, but here's the interesting part," Sheriff Williams continued. "The rangers say the drag pattern is consistent with something being carefully pulled, not the random disturbance you'd see with most predators." And there were what appeared to be dog prints alongside. "A wild dog?" William asked, uncertain whether to be horrified or hopeful. "That's where it gets strange," the sheriff replied. "Our wildlife officer says they look like domestic dog prints, not coyote or wolf. Large breed, probably a German shepherd or similar." The information sparked a memory, and William pulled out his phone with trembling hands. He scrolled through photos until he found what he was looking for, a Christmas picture from 7 months ago showing Sarah and her family in front of their tree. In the foreground, Noah sat propped against a large German shepherd, the baby's tiny hand clutching the dog's fur while the animal gazed protectively at the camera. "Max," William whispered, showing the sheriff the photo. "They had a rescue dog named Max. Sarah told me he ran away during a camping trip in these mountains about 6 months ago. They searched for weeks but never found him." Sheriff Williams studied the photo, his expression reflecting cautious optimism. "It's a long shot, but if this is the same dog, and if he recognized Noah, he might be protecting him," William finished, a dangerous hope kindling in his chest. "We need to redirect the search to follow those tracks." The search coordinator, overhearing their conversation, looked skeptical. "Mr. Anderson, with all due respect, even if this is your daughter's missing dog, a domestic animal gone feral for 6 months wouldn't likely." "You don't know Max," William interrupted firmly. "He was a trained search and rescue dog before Sarah adopted him. If anyone could keep my grandson alive out there, it would be him." Within 30 minutes, the search strategy had been adjusted. Teams with tracking dogs were dispatched to the area where the drag marks had been found, with instructions to look for signs of a large German Shepherd and to call out not only Noah's name but also Max. Meanwhile, back at the cave, Max continued his guard duty as the afternoon faded into evening. Noah's condition was reaching a critical point. His crying had stopped entirely, replaced by a listless quiet that worried Max more than the previous tears. The infant needed help soon. As twilight approached, Max's acute hearing detected a new sound, the low growl of a mountain lion. Unlike the passing bear, this predator was actively hunting, and the scent of vulnerability emanating from their cave would be irresistible. Max rose to his feet, hackles raised, positioning himself at the cave entrance. His wild months had taught him to avoid such confrontations when possible, but retreat wasn't an option now. The cave had only one entrance, and Noah couldn't be moved quickly or safely. The mountain lion emerged from the underbrush 50 yards from the cave, its muscular body moving with deadly grace. At over 150 pounds, the cat outweighed Max by at least 30 pounds and possessed natural weapons, claws, and fangs evolved specifically for killing. Max knew he was outmatched, but his protective instinct overrode all else. He advanced several paces from the cave entrance, his body language a clear challenge to the predator. To reach the baby, the mountain lion would have to go through him. For several tense moments, the two predators assessed each other. Then, with a snarl, the mountain lion charged. Max met the attack head-on, all his rescue training transmuted into fighting skill. He dodged the initial pounce, snapping at the cat's flank as it passed. The mountain lion whirled with unnatural speed, its paw lashing out to catch Max across the shoulder, opening a long gash. Pain flared, but Max barely registered it, his entire focus on keeping the fight away from the cave entrance. The battle continued for several minutes, a brutal dance of teeth and claws. Max sustained several injuries, including a deep bite to his flank, but he managed to inflict damage as well, his powerful jaws finding purchase on the mountain lion's leg. Both animals were tiring, blood darkening their fur, when Max executed a desperate gamble. As the mountain lion prepared for another charge, Max darted toward a nearby fallen log, leaping atop it to gain the momentary height advantage. When the cat followed, Max launched himself directly at his opponent's throat, his teeth seeking the vital blood vessels that would end the fight. His gamble succeeded, but at a terrible cost. As Max's teeth found their target, the mountain lion's claws raked down his abdomen, creating deep wounds. The cat thrashed violently, then gradually weakened as blood loss took its toll. Finally, the predator collapsed, its flanks heaving with increasingly labored breaths until they stopped altogether. Max stood over his fallen adversary for several moments, his own breathing ragged and painful. Blood matted his fur, and each movement sent waves of agony through his body. He knew instinctively that some of his wounds were serious, the kind his handler would have immediately addressed with emergency veterinary care. But there was no handler now, no help coming. There was only Noah, alone in the cave, depending entirely on him. With tremendous effort, Max limped back to the cave entrance, leaving a sporadic trail of blood droplets. Inside, he checked on Noah, relieved to find the baby still breathing, though unresponsive even to Max's gentle nudge. The dog settled painfully beside the car seat, his body shivering with shock and blood loss. As darkness fell, Max fought to stay conscious, knowing that the mountain lion might have a mate nearby or that other predators would be drawn to the scent of blood. Despite his injuries, his vigil must continue. Throughout the night, Noah's fever worsened. By dawn, the baby's breathing had become shallow and rapid, his small body fighting a battle it couldn't win without help. Max's own condition had deteriorated as well. Infection was setting into his wounds, and internal bleeding from the mountain lion's claws had weakened him severely. He could barely stand now, managing only to drag himself to the stream for water and back. Even this small effort cost him tremendously, but he persisted, wetting Noah's parched lips whenever possible. In his pain-clouded mind, Max recalled his training sessions on wilderness medicine. One particular memory surfaced, his handler showing him certain plants with medicinal properties. Near their cave grew similar plants, broad leaves with a distinctive scent that his handler had used once to reduce fever in a lost hiker. With monumental effort, Max dragged himself out of the cave and to the patch of plants he had noticed earlier. He carefully selected several leaves, gripping them gently in his teeth before returning to Noah. Max had no way to prepare the leaves properly, but instinct guided him. He chewed them slightly, releasing their natural oils, then carefully placed them near Noah, allowing their volatile compounds to reach the baby. It was a primitive remedy, unlikely to make a significant difference, but it represented Max's desperate attempt to use every resource available to him. By mid-morning of the third day, Max's strength was failing rapidly. He lay beside Noah, his once vigilant head now resting on his paws, his breathing labored. The thought that he might die here, having failed to save Noah after all, brought a whimper of distress. He had done everything possible, fought beyond his limits, but it might not be enough. As consciousness began to slip away, Max heard a sound that pierced his fog of pain, human voices, closer than ever before, and among them, a word he recognized despite the months since he'd heard it last. Max. Max. With his remaining strength, Max lifted his head and let out a bark weak compared to his usual powerful voice, but audible. He paused, listening. The voices stopped momentarily, then resumed with increased urgency, heading in their direction. Max barked again, each effort sending spikes of pain through his wounded body. He managed 3 more barks before his strength gave out entirely, his head dropping back to his paws as unconsciousness beckoned. The last thing Max registered before darkness claimed him was the sound of rapid footsteps approaching the cave entrance and a human exclamation, "My God!" "In here, we found them." Miles away in a small clearing that served as a resupply point for the search teams, truck driver Michael Reeves sat alone on a fallen log, his face haggard with exhaustion and guilt. He had been helping with the search since reporting the accident, driving supply vehicles along forest roads to support the teams, but he avoided direct contact with William Anderson. How could he face the man whose family he had destroyed through his carelessness? When his relief driver arrived, Michael found himself unable to leave. Instead, he approached the search coordinator, Sheriff Williams. "I want to join one of the ground teams," he said quietly. "I need to help find that baby." The sheriff studied Michael's face, recognizing the haunted look of a man tortured by his actions. "You've been helping plenty with the supplies, Mr. Reeves. The terrain out there is rough, and you've been up for what, nearly 3 days straight?" "Please," Michael insisted, his voice breaking. "I can't just sit around anymore. I need to do this." Sheriff Williams considered for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Team 8 is heading out in 10 minutes to follow those dog tracks we found yesterday. Report to Ranger Davis over by the blue tent." Michael almost ran to the designated meeting point, desperate for a chance at redemption, however small. He couldn't undo the tragedy he had caused, but perhaps he could help save the one remaining member of the Anderson family. As he joined the team and received his instructions, he silently vowed that he wouldn't return without Noah, no matter what it took. The morning sun filtered through the forest canopy as Search Team 8 made their way along the ridge, following the increasingly promising signs of Max's trail. Michael Reeves trudged alongside Ranger Davis, his eyes constantly scanning the ground for any indication of the missing child or dog. His shoulders ached from carrying the heavy backpack filled with medical supplies, but the physical discomfort was nothing compared to the weight of guilt that had pressed upon him since the accident. Every step felt like penance, necessary but insufficient to atone for his actions. William Anderson had insisted on joining this particular team after learning they were following Max's tracks. The elderly man moved with surprising agility over the difficult terrain, his military training evident in his methodical approach and unwavering focus despite his exhaustion. His face remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed his desperate hope each time the tracking dogs indicated they had picked up a fresh scent. "The tracks are fresher here," Ranger Davis announced, kneeling to examine a partial paw print in a patch of mud. "And there's something else." He pointed to small droplets of darkened soil beside the print. "That's blood. Recent, too." William's expression tightened. "Max," or he couldn't bring himself to finish the sentence. "Can't tell," the ranger replied honestly. "But the pattern suggests an animal moving with purpose, not dragging prey. Let's pick up the pace." As they continued, Michael found himself gradually moving closer to William, drawn by an overwhelming need to say something, anything, to the man whose world he had shattered. After several false starts, he finally spoke. "Mr. Anderson, I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover it, but I want you to know." "Not now," William interrupted, his voice flat but not unkind. "If we find Noah alive, you can say whatever you need to. If we don't," he left the sentence unfinished, but his meaning was clear. No apology would matter if his grandson was gone too. Michael nodded, accepting the rebuke as just another part of his burden. He fell back slightly, giving William space while maintaining his vigilant search of their surroundings. It was Michael who first noticed the unusual stillness ahead. The forest birds had gone quiet, a sign that something had disturbed the natural rhythm of the wilderness. He raised his hand, signaling for silence, a gesture so unexpected from a civilian that the team actually complied. In the sudden quiet, they all heard a weak, muffled bark coming from somewhere to their right. "Max," William called out, his voice breaking. "Max." Another bark answered, feebler than before, but unmistakable. The tracking dogs strained at their leashes, now certain of their direction. The team moved quickly through the underbrush, following the sounds until they reached a small clearing. On the far side, partially hidden by ferns and fallen logs, was the entrance to a shallow cave. "Be careful," Ranger Davis warned. "If that's a wounded animal in there, it could be dangerous." William ignored the caution, pushing forward toward the cave entrance. Michael was right behind him, first aid kit already in hand. As they approached, William called out again, "Max." "Good boy, Max." A weak whine answered from the darkness inside. William dropped to his knees at the entrance, peering into the gloom. What he saw made his breath catch: a bloodied German shepherd lying protectively beside a baby car seat, raising his head with obvious effort at their approach. "No, Max." William's voice broke completely as he crawled into the cave entrance. "I found them," he shouted back to the team. "They're alive. Get the medic up here now." Michael was already beside him, his headlamp illuminating the incredible scene. Max, covered in blood from multiple wounds, still positioned himself between them and the baby, his protective instinct intact despite his grievous injuries. In the car seat, Noah lay unnaturally still, his skin flushed with fever, lips cracked from dehydration. "Easy, boy," William soothed, extending his hand palm up toward Max. "Remember me? It's Grandpa William." "You did good, Max, so good. Let us help Noah now." The recognition in Max's eyes was immediate and heartbreaking. The dog's entire body seemed to relax, as if finally allowing himself to relinquish his duty now that help had arrived. He made a valiant attempt to wag his tail before collapsing fully onto his side, exposing the full extent of his injuries: deep gashes across his abdomen and flank, bite marks on his shoulder, and numerous smaller cuts covered in dirt and forest debris. The team's medic pushed past Michael, immediately focusing on Noah. "He's severely dehydrated and feverish," she reported clinically, though her hands were gentle as she examined the infant. "But his vital signs are surprisingly stable given the circumstances. We need to get him to a hospital immediately." William nodded, torn between attending to his grandson and the dog who had saved him. Michael made the decision for him. "Sir, stay with Noah," he said firmly. "I'll look after Max." Michael turned his attention to the injured German shepherd, carefully examining the wounds while trying not to cause additional pain. The deep gashes on Max's abdomen were his greatest concern. They showed signs of internal bleeding that no field treatment could address. The dog's breathing was increasingly labored, his once bright eyes growing dull as shock and blood loss took their toll. "We need a veterinarian," Michael called out, applying pressure bandages to the worst wounds. "He's critical." Ranger Davis was already on the radio coordinating the evacuation. Med-evac helicopter is inbound, ETA 12 minutes. They can take both patients. "Will they take a dog?" William asked sharply. "I've already advised them of the situation," the ranger assured him. "This is a special circumstance. The helicopter service has agreed to transport both." The next 10 minutes passed in a blur of activity. The medic administered emergency treatment to Noah, setting up an IV for fluids while monitoring his vital signs. Michael continued working on Max, cleaning wounds where possible and applying bandages from the first aid kit, all while speaking softly to the injured animal. "Hang in there, hero," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You've done the impossible. Just a little longer now." Max's eyes remained fixed on Noah even as the medical team prepared the baby for transport, his dedication unwavering despite his failing strength. When the distinctive sound of helicopter blades echoed through the valley, the dog attempted to rise, as if still determined to protect his charge from this new unknown. "It's okay, Max," William reassured him, momentarily leaving Noah's side to kneel beside the dog. "They're here to help. You can rest now, boy. You've saved him. You've saved our Noah." Whether Max understood the words or merely the tone, he settled back down, his eyes still tracking every movement around the baby. The helicopter landed in a small clearing 100 yards away, and the medical crew jogged toward the cave with a stretcher and equipment. The evacuation was a coordinated effort, with Noah secured first, his tiny form dwarfed by the adult-sized stretcher. William walked alongside, refusing to be separated from his grandson even momentarily. Michael and Ranger Davis carefully lifted Max onto a makeshift stretcher fashioned from a rescue blanket, mindful of his injuries. The dog whimpered only once during the transfer when Noah was briefly out of his sight. "They're taking him to the same place, buddy," Michael assured him, stroking his head gently. "You're going together." The journey to the helicopter was slow and careful. Max grew increasingly still, his breathing shallow, but his eyes remained open, fixed on the stretcher carrying Noah whenever it was in view. As they reached the helicopter, the pilot emerged with a concerned expression. "We're not equipped for animal transport," he began. William fixed him with a steely gaze. "This dog saved my grandson's life. He's coming with us." The pilot hesitated, then nodded. "We'll make it work." Inside the helicopter, space was indeed limited. Noah and William took priority positions, secured for the flight with proper medical equipment. Max's makeshift stretcher was wedged into the remaining floor space, with Michael kneeling beside him, one hand on the dog's flank to monitor his breathing throughout the flight. As the helicopter lifted off, Max seemed to relax slightly, perhaps sensing that his mission was truly complete. Michael leaned close to his ear, speaking over the roar of the engines. "You're the greatest hero I've ever seen, Max. You saved him when nobody else could. Just hold on now. Your family needs you." The 20-minute flight to Asheville's trauma center felt eternal. Noah remained stable, but Max's condition deteriorated steadily. By the time they landed on the hospital's helipad, the dog's breathing had become erratic, his once alert eyes now unfocused. The medical staff rushed out to receive Noah, quickly transferring him to a pediatric gurney and whisking him inside. "What about the dog?" William asked urgently as he prepared to follow his grandson. "Western Carolina Veterinary Emergency Center is 3 blocks away," the pilot informed them. "We've radioed ahead they're sending transport." Michael made an instant decision. "I'll stay with Max." "You go with Noah, Mr. Anderson." "I promise I'll take care of him." William hesitated, clearly torn, then nodded once. "He deserves the best care possible, whatever it costs." "I'll handle everything," Michael interrupted. "Go, Noah needs you." As William hurried after the medical team, Michael returned to Max's side. The dog's condition was worsening by the minute, his powerful body now limp and unresponsive. "Stay with me, Max," Michael pleaded, his voice breaking. "Just a little longer. Help is coming." When the veterinary transport arrived minutes later, Michael insisted on riding along, keeping his hand on Max's side throughout the short drive. The emergency veterinary team was waiting at the entrance, alerted to the extraordinary circumstances of their patient. 3 days in the wilderness protecting a baby after fighting off what appears to be a mountain lion, the lead veterinarian summarized as they rushed Max inside. "This dog deserves our absolute best. Let's get him into surgery immediately." Michael found himself relegated to the waiting room, still covered in Max's blood, his hands trembling from adrenaline and exhaustion. As the reality of the last few hours washed over him, he sank into a chair and buried his face in his hands. The tears came without warning, tears for the lives lost in the accident he had caused, for the miraculous survival of Noah, and for the extraordinary dog fighting for his life in the operating room. Hours passed in the sterile waiting area. Michael called the hospital regularly for updates on Noah, relieved to hear the baby was responding well to treatment, already showing improvement with proper hydration and antibiotics. William had sent word that he would come to the veterinary center as soon as Noah was stabilized, wanting to check on Max personally. Shortly after sunset, the lead veterinarian emerged from the treatment area, her surgical mask dangling around her neck, her expression grave but not defeated. Michael stood immediately, bracing himself for the news. "He survived the first surgery," she began, "but I won't sugarcoat this, his injuries are extensive. The internal damage from what was definitely a mountain lion attack has caused significant bleeding. We've repaired what we can, but he's not out of danger. The next 24 hours will be critical." "But he could make it?" Michael asked, seizing on the slim hope. "He's shown extraordinary resilience already," the veterinarian acknowledged. "Most dogs would have succumbed to these injuries long before reaching help. If determination counts for anything, he has that in abundance." "Can I see him?" The veterinarian hesitated, then nodded briefly. "He's heavily sedated and on a ventilator, but some studies suggest familiar presences can help even in unconscious patients." She led Michael to the intensive care unit, where Max lay surrounded by monitoring equipment, his body mostly hidden under sterile drapes, with his chest rising and falling with the mechanical assistance of the ventilator. Michael approached slowly, overwhelmed by the contrast between the vibrant, heroic animal from the forest and this fragile patient fighting for life. "Hey, Max," he whispered, gently touching the dog's head in one of the few areas free of medical equipment. "Noah's doing great thanks to you. He's going to be okay." Michael's voice caught as he continued, "You've done more than enough, but we need you to keep fighting. William needs you. Noah needs you." He paused, then added softly, "I need you to make it too. Please." Whether it was imagination or reality, Michael thought he felt the slightest movement under his hand, not quite a response, but perhaps an acknowledgement. He stayed until the veterinary technician gently indicated it was time to leave, promising to return first thing in the morning. As Michael stepped out into the hospital parking lot, the weight of the past 3 days crashed down upon him. The adrenaline that had kept him functioning finally ebbed away, leaving bone-deep exhaustion in its wake. Yet alongside the fatigue and lingering guilt was something new, a fragile thread of hope. Noah would live. And just maybe against all odds, Max would too. Michael looked up at the night sky, stars emerging in the clear mountain air, and made a silent vow. Whatever happened next, whether Max survived or not, he would ensure the dog's incredible sacrifice and devotion would never be forgotten. Some debts could never be fully repaid, but he would spend the rest of his life trying. The reunion between William Anderson and his grandson occurred in the pediatric intensive care unit of Asheville Memorial Hospital. Noah lay in a specialized crib, multiple monitors tracking his vital signs, and IV delivering fluids and antibiotics to combat his dehydration and infection. Despite the clinical setting, it was a moment of profound joy. William stood beside the crib, one weathered hand gently resting on Noah's small chest, feeling the steady rise and fall that confirmed his grandson's survival. His fever's responding well to treatment, the pediatrician explained, reviewing Noah's chart. Remarkably, he's avoided any serious complications. The dehydration was our greatest concern, but we're addressing that aggressively. Children his age are surprisingly resilient. "When can I hold him?" William asked, not taking his eyes off Noah's face. "Once we're confident his temperature has stabilized, likely within the next few hours," the doctor replied. "For now, this level of contact is actually beneficial. He needs to reestablish human connection after his ordeal." William nodded, tears gathering in his eyes. "He was never alone out there," he said softly. "Max was with him the entire time." The doctor's expression softened with understanding. "The dog they brought in with him? I've heard the staff talking about it. Truly remarkable." "I need to check on him when Noah's settled," William said. "I owe that dog everything." A nurse entered with additional medication for Noah's IV, and William reluctantly stepped back to allow her access. As he did, a social worker appeared in the doorway, her expression professionally sympathetic. "Mr. Anderson? I'm Teresa Hawkins from Child Protective Services. I was hoping we could talk about Noah's care arrangements going forward." William straightened, his military bearing returning instinctively. "Of course." Course. They moved to a small consultation room adjacent to the ICU, where Teresa outlined the immediate concerns. "First, please accept my deepest condolences for your loss," she began. "I understand you're Noah's maternal grandfather and only surviving relative?" "That's correct. My wife passed 3 years ago, and Sarah was our only child. In cases like this, temporary guardianship is typically granted to the closest suitable relative while we establish permanent arrangements. Given the circumstances, we'd like to begin that process immediately to ensure continuity of care for Noah once he's released from the hospital." William nodded, relief evident in his face. "I want to take him home with me as soon as he's medically cleared. I'm retired, financially secure, and I've helped raise him since he was born. Sarah and James often stayed with me when they needed a break." Teresa made notes in her file. "That's all very positive. We'll need to conduct a home evaluation, of course, but I don't anticipate any issues with temporary custody. Permanent legal guardianship will require court approval, but given the circumstances, that should proceed smoothly." As they continued discussing the necessary paperwork and procedures, William's phone rang. He checked the screen, then looked up apologetically. "It's the veterinary hospital. I need to take this." Teresa nodded understandingly, and William answered the call, his expression growing increasingly concerned as he listened. When he ended the call, his face had paled noticeably. "Max has taken a turn for the worse," he explained, his voice tight. "They've had to perform a second emergency surgery. The internal bleeding resumed unexpectedly." "Go," Teresa said without hesitation. "We can continue this discussion later. Noah is stable and well cared for here." William hurried from the hospital to the veterinary center 3 blocks away, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. The joy of Noah's recovery now tempered by the potential loss of the dog who had made it possible. He found Michael Reeves in the waiting room, haggard and unshaven, but still maintaining his vigil. "Any updates?" William asked without preamble. Michael shook his head. "He's been in surgery for almost 2 hours now. The bleeding was worse than they initially thought." He hesitated, then added, "How's Noah?" "Improving steadily," William replied, his tone softening slightly. "The doctors are optimistic about a full recovery." An uncomfortable silence fell between them, the grandfather of the surviving child and the man whose actions had orphaned him. Michael finally broke the tension. "Mr. Anderson, I know words are meaningless compared to what I've done, but—" "You found them," William interrupted, his voice level. "You stayed with Max when I couldn't. That counts for something." Before Michael could respond, the lead veterinarian emerged from the surgical suite, her expression grim as she approached them. Both men stood, bracing for the news. "We've done everything possible," she began, her professional demeanor unable to completely mask her emotion. "The internal damage was simply too extensive. We've repaired the immediate bleeding, but his organs have been compromised. He's critical but stable for now." "But he could still recover?" William asked, clinging to hope. The veterinarian sighed. "I believe in being straightforward. While recovery isn't impossible, it's unlikely. The injuries themselves were severe, but combined with 3 days of protecting Noah without treatment, the damage is compounded. His body is simply exhausted." William's military composure cracked slightly. "Can I see him?" "Of course. He's being moved to recovery now." "I should warn you, he's on full life support at this point." When William entered the recovery area, the reality of Max's condition hit him with physical force. The powerful dog who had once played tirelessly with Noah was now dwarfed by medical equipment, his body connected to monitors and IBS, a ventilator breathing for him. His normally alert face was slack, eyes closed, the only movement the artificial rise and fall of his chest. William approached slowly, placing his hand gently on Max's head, one of the few areas not bandaged or connected to equipment. "Hey, boy," he said softly, "Noah's doing great, thanks to you. He's going to be just fine." The monitors continued their steady beeping, no response from the unconscious dog. William continued speaking, his voice growing thicker with emotion. "You found him when no one else could. You protected him when we couldn't reach him. You brought our boy back to us." A veterinary technician entered quietly, checking Max's vital signs and adjusting one of the IVs. "You can talk to him," she encouraged gently. "Many of us believe they can hear us even in this state." William nodded, grateful for the permission to continue what felt like a one-sided conversation. When the technician left, he pulled a chair close to Max's bedside and settled in, maintaining contact with the dog while finding words to express his overwhelming gratitude. "Sarah always said you were special," he continued, memories flooding back. "From the day she adopted you from that rescue group, she knew. Remember how you used to sleep outside Noah's nursery every night? How you'd alert them when he cried before they even heard him on the monitor." The one-sided conversation continued as William shared memories of Max with the Anderson family Christmas mornings when Max would help unwrap gifts, the summer barbecues where he'd patiently allow toddler Noah to use him as a climbing post, the camping trip where he'd disappeared, leading to months of desperate searching. "They never gave up looking for you, you know," William said quietly. "Sarah hired trackers, posted rewards. She checked shelter websites every day until his voice broke. Until the accident. She would be so proud of what you did for Noah. So incredibly proud." The veterinarian returned, checking Max's charts with a furrowed brow. "His vital signs are declining gradually," she informed William gently. "I think you should prepare yourself. Would you like us to contact Michael as well?" William nodded. He should be here too. When Michael joined them in the recovery room, the atmosphere had grown heavier, the beeping of the monitors slightly slower, more labored. The two men stood on opposite sides of Max's bed, united in their vigil despite the tragedy that connected them. "The staff are saying he's held on this long through sheer willpower," Michael said quietly. "They've never seen anything like it." William managed a sad smile. Sarah used to say he was the most stubborn dog she'd ever met. Once he decided on something, that was it. "And he decided to save Noah," Michael added, his voice thick with emotion. "At any cost," William agreed, gently stroking Max's ear. "I just wish." The monitor's rhythm suddenly changed, the steady beeps becoming irregular. The veterinarian rushed in, quickly assessing the situation. "His heart is failing," she explained, already preparing emergency medication. "We can try to stabilize him again, but given his overall condition." She left the question unspoken, looking to William for direction. As Noah's family member and now Max's de facto owner, the decision fell to him. He looked down at the brave dog who had already suffered so much, who had given everything to save his grandson. "No more interventions," William said, his voice barely audible. "He's done enough. More than enough." The veterinarian nodded with understanding. "We'll make him comfortable and give you some time with him." As the medical team adjusted Max's medication to ensure he felt no pain, William leaned close to the dog's ear. "It's okay to let go now, Max. You brought Noah home. You completed your mission. Rest now, good boy." "Rest? Well, rest." Whether Max heard those words or simply reached the limit of his extraordinary endurance, the monitor showed his heartbeat gradually slowing. William and Michael remained at his side, offering what comfort they could through gentle touches and soft words of gratitude. In his final moments, Max's eyes fluttered open briefly, seeming to search the room before closing again for the last time. The loss was devastating yet strangely beautiful, a life given in the purest expression of loyalty and love. As the veterinarian confirmed Max's passing, William stood rigid, his military discipline barely containing his grief. Beside him, Michael wept openly, the culmination of days of guilt, exhaustion, and witness to extraordinary courage finally overwhelming him. "He was a hero," William said firmly. "The greatest kind of hero." William's grief over Max's sacrifice was temporarily set aside the following morning when he returned to Noah's bedside. The baby had improved dramatically overnight, his fever reduced to a mild elevation, his hydration levels approaching normal. The pediatrician upgraded his condition from critical to stable, projecting a discharge date within the next few days. "He's responding remarkably well to treatment," the doctor explained, reviewing Noah's latest test results. "We'll continue monitoring for any delayed complications, but I'm increasingly confident about a full recovery." William nodded gratefully, his attention focused on Noah, who was now alert enough to recognize him. The baby's face brightened when he saw his grandfather, tiny arms reaching up in a universal gesture of wanting to be held. With the doctor's permission, William carefully lifted Noah from the hospital crib, mindful of the IV line still delivering fluids. "Hey there, soldier," William whispered, cradling his grandson close. "You're quite the survivor." Noah settled against William's chest, one small hand clutching his shirt while the other made repetitive patting motions, accompanied by questioning sounds that William recognized immediately. "You're looking for Max, aren't you?" William said softly, his voice catching. "He's not here, buddy. He made sure you got home safe, but he couldn't come with you." The baby continued his searching movements, clearly expecting the German Shepherd to appear. William held him closer, unsure how to explain death to a 1-year-old, or whether Noah would even understand the concept of permanence at his age. Later that afternoon, while Noah napped under the watchful eye of a pediatric nurse, William met with Detective Laura Sanderson from the County Sheriff's Department. She had been assigned to investigate the accident and had requested a formal statement from William as Noah's guardian. "I understand this is a difficult time," Detective Sanderson began, her tone professional but compassionate. "I'll try to keep this brief. We're attempting to compile a comprehensive report on the accident and the subsequent events." William provided what information he could, describing the search efforts and eventual discovery of Noah and Max. When he mentioned the German Shepherd's heroism, the detective's expression shifted subtly. "About the dog," she said, consulting her notes. "Our department obtained the vehicle registration and insurance information for your daughter's family. During the investigation, we discovered something that might interest you." She retrieved a folder from her briefcase and withdrew a document, a missing pet report filed with Animal Control 7 months earlier. Attached was a photograph of Max, looking healthier and happier than the battle-worn dog William had seen in the cave. According to this report, the Anderson family's dog disappeared during a camping trip in these mountains last October, Detective Sanderson explained. "They spent weeks searching for him, posted rewards, the whole 9 yards. William stared at the report, a complex emotion washing over him. Max wasn't just any German shepherd who found Noah by chance, he said slowly, the realization dawning. He was our Max. He recognized Noah as family. It appears so, the detective confirmed. The microchip number from the veterinary report matches the one listed in this missing pet documentation. There's no doubt it's the same animal. This revelation cast Max's actions in an even more poignant light. The dog hadn't merely saved a random child, he had rescued a beloved family member he recognized despite months of separation. The loyalty and devotion evident in this act struck William with renewed force, intensifying both his grief over Max's death and his amazement at the dog's extraordinary actions. "Does this change anything practically?" William asked, composing himself. "Not regarding Noah's custody," Detective Sanderson assured him. "But it could potentially affect any decisions about memorial arrangements for the dog. I understand there's been considerable media interest in the story." William nodded grimly. Word of Max's heroism had spread quickly through the hospital and veterinary center, eventually reaching local news outlets. By morning, reporters had gathered outside both facilities, eager for updates and interviews. William had thus far declined all requests, protecting Noah's privacy during his recovery. "Speaking of media attention," the detective continued, "there's one other matter we should discuss. The driver of the logging truck, Michael Reeves, he's been cooperating fully with our investigation. The evidence suggests fatigue and possible excessive speed for the conditions, which could result in charges of negligent driving leading to fatalities." William absorbed this information silently. PC. His feelings toward Michael complicated by the man's obvious remorse and his dedication to Max during the critical hours after the rescue. "Would my statement affect those potential charges?" he asked finally. Detective Sanderson hesitated. "Your perspective on the aftermath would be considered, particularly your interactions with Mr. Reeves during the search and at the veterinary center. Your character testimony often factors into sentencing considerations, though not typically into the charging decision itself." William nodded, understanding the implication. "I'll need to think about that. For now, my focus is on Noah." After the detective left, William returned to Noah's room to find the baby awake and more alert than before. A child life specialist had brought age-appropriate toys, which Noah investigated with growing interest, his natural curiosity reasserting itself even amid the strange hospital environment. William watched him play, marveling at his resilience while contemplating the revelations about Max. Later that evening, as William sat beside Noah's crib completing guardianship paperwork, Teresa Hawkins from Child Protective Services returned with unexpected news. "Mr. Anderson, we've encountered a situation that requires your attention," she began, her professional demeanor slightly strained. "A national animal rights organization has filed a petition regarding Max." William looked up, confused. "Max passed away yesterday. What petition could possibly involve him now?" Teresa sighed, clearly uncomfortable. "They're seeking to claim his remains for a public memorial. Their legal team is arguing that as a hero animal who saved a human life at the cost of his own, Max deserves a public commemoration. They've already collected thousands of online signatures supporting their petition." William's expression hardened. "Absolutely not. Max was our family dog. His remains will be handled according to our wishes, not used for publicity by some organization that never knew him." "I completely understand your position," Teresa assured him. "Unfortunately, because Max was technically classified as an abandoned animal when found with Noah, the legal situation is somewhat complicated. The veterinary center has temporarily delayed any disposition pending resolution." William stood abruptly, his patience exhausted. "First, they take my daughter, son-in-law, and granddaughter. Then they try to take control of Noah's future. Now they want to claim the dog who gave his life to save the only family I have left. No, enough is enough." His vehemence surprised even himself, the accumulated stress and grief of the past days finally finding an outlet. Teresa stepped back slightly, recognizing the depth of his emotion. "Mr. Anderson, I'm on your side here," she said quietly. "I believe Noah's welfare, physical and emotional, includes honoring the dog who saved him in a way that respects your family's wishes. But we need to address this legally to prevent any complications." William took a deep breath, regaining his composure. "I apologize for my outburst. What do you suggest?" "I know an excellent family attorney who could file an immediate injunction establishing your right to Max's remains based on prior ownership and current guardianship of Noah. The microchip evidence Detective Sanderson found strengthens your position considerably." "Please make that happen," William requested, his tone regaining its military precision. "And contact Michael Reeves as well. His testimony about Max's final hours could be valuable." As Teresa left to make the necessary calls, William returned to Noah's bedside. The baby had fallen asleep clutching a small stuffed dog the hospital staff had provided a poor substitute for Max, but one that seemed to comfort him nonetheless. William gently adjusted the blanket around Noah's shoulders, his mind working through the implications of this new challenge. The following morning brought another unexpected development. As William entered the hospital after a brief trip to his hotel to shower and change clothes, he found Michael Reeves waiting in the lobby, accompanied by a distinguished older man in an expensive suit. "Mr. Anderson," Michael greeted him hesitantly. "This is Howard Mitchell, my attorney. We heard about the situation with Max and we want to help." William regarded them cautiously. "What kind of help?" Howard Mitchell stepped forward, offering his hand. "Mr. Anderson, my client has instructed me to provide whatever legal support you need regarding Max's remains. Additionally, he wants you to know that he's prepared to make a statement accepting full responsibility for the accident, regardless of the legal consequences to himself." William's expression registered surprise. "Why would you do that?" Michael answered directly, meeting William's gaze for the first time. "Because it's the truth, and because I owe your family a debt I can never repay. Helping preserve Max's dignity and Noah's connection to him is literally the least I can do." This unexpected alliance shifted the dynamic of the legal battle that followed. With combined resources and the compelling narrative of Max's heroism and prior family connection, William's legal team successfully secured an injunction against the animal rights organization's claim. The court recognized the Anderson family's prior ownership and William's current guardianship of Noah as establishing clear rights to determine Max's final arrangements. The victory, while significant, opened yet another question for William. What would be the most appropriate way to honor Max's extraordinary sacrifice while respecting his status as a beloved family member? As Noah continued to improve physically while clearly missing his canine protector, William began to formulate a plan that would preserve Max's legacy while helping his grandson heal from his traumatic experience. 5 days after his rescue, Noah Anderson was discharged from Asheville Memorial Hospital. William carried his grandson out through a side entrance, avoiding the cluster of reporters still hoping for interviews about the remarkable survival story. The pediatricians had pronounced Noah fully recovered physically, though they cautioned that the emotional impacts of his ordeal might manifest in various ways as he developed. "Children his age are remarkably adaptable," Dr. Martinez had explained during their final consultation. "But trauma can surface in unexpected ways, particularly during developmental transitions. I'd recommend establishing a relationship with a pediatric psychologist who can monitor his progress and provide guidance if needed." William had taken this advice seriously, already scheduling an initial consultation with a specialist in childhood trauma once they were settled at home. Home would now be William's house on 5 acres of land outside Nashville, Tennessee. The modest ranch-style house where he had lived with his late wife for 30 years would require some adjustments to accommodate a 1-year-old, but William approached this challenge with the same methodical determination that had characterized his military career. Before leaving Asheville, William made one final stop at the veterinary center where Max had spent his last hours. The staff had prepared Max's remains according to William's wishes, treating the heroic dog with dignity and respect. The simple wooden box felt unexpectedly heavy in William's hands as he placed it carefully in the car beside Noah's car seat. "What will you do now?" Michael Reeves asked quietly. He had come to say goodbye, his legal situation still uncertain, but his commitment to supporting William and Noah unwavering. "We're going home to Tennessee," William replied, securing Noah in his car seat. "I've got a guest room that will make a fine nursery, and plenty of yard for him to play in when he's older." Michael nodded, hesitating before speaking again. "And Max?" William's expression softened slightly. "I've found the perfect place for him, somewhere Noah can visit when he's ready to understand." They parted with an awkward handshake that evolved into a brief embrace, two men forever connected by tragedy and redemption, loss and survival. Michael had chosen to remain in North Carolina to face whatever legal consequences awaited him, a decision William respected, even as he had privately submitted a statement to the district attorney describing Michael's crucial role in finding Noah and supporting Max. The 3-hour drive to Nashville gave William time to reflect on the extraordinary events that had forever altered his life. The devastating loss of Sarah, James, and Emily remained a raw wound that would likely never fully heal. Yet alongside this grief was profound gratitude for Noah's survival and for Max's incredible sacrifice. These competing emotions would need to find balance in the life he was now creating for himself and his grandson. William's home had been prepared for their arrival by a network of neighbors and fellow veterans who had rallied around him after hearing of the tragedy. Fresh paint brightened the formerly spare guest room, now transformed into a cheerful nursery with a crib, changing table, and toys appropriate for Noah's age. The refrigerator was stocked with food, including homemade baby-friendly meals labeled with heating instructions. A collection of children's books filled a new bookshelf, many titles familiar from Sarah's own childhood. "It Takes a Village," Martha Johnson, his next-door neighbor for 20 years, reminded him as she demonstrated how to use the baby monitor system she had installed. "We're your village now, William. Don't you dare think you're doing this alone." The first weeks of their new life established a routine that provided stability for both grandfather and grandson. William approached parenting with the same disciplined commitment he had given his military service, researching child development, consulting experts, and implementing consistent schedules for meals, naps, and play. Noah responded well to this structure, gradually becoming more animated and engaged as the security of their new life together took hold. 1 month after settling in Nashville, William fulfilled his plan for Max. On a clear spring morning, he drove Noah to a beautiful spot on his property, a gentle hill overlooking a small pond where ducks often gathered. Here, William had created a special memorial garden. At its center stood a simple granite marker engraved with Max's name and the dates of his life, along with the words "faithful beyond measure." William had planted dogwood trees to provide shade and installed a comfortable bench where he and Noah could sit together. Most significantly, he had buried Max's remains here, along with the stuffed lion that had been Noah's constant companion before the accident and had somehow survived the crash. The toy represented the family they had lost, a tangible connection to Noah's parents and sister now watching over Max in a way William found comforting, though he would have dismissed such sentiments before experiencing this profound loss. "This is Max's special place," William explained as he held Noah on his lap on the bench, knowing the baby couldn't yet understand, but establishing a tradition they would continue as Noah grew. "He was the bravest, most loyal friend anyone could have. He brought you back to me when nothing else could have." Noah seemed to sense the importance of the moment, remaining unusually still as William spoke. When a butterfly landed briefly on the granite marker, Noah pointed excitedly, his first genuine smile since the accident illuminating his face. As summer turned to fall, life in the Anderson household found its rhythm. Noah flourished under William's care, meeting developmental milestones and gradually showing fewer signs of the trauma he had experienced. William maintained regular video calls with Noah's doctors in Asheville and followed their guidance closely, particularly regarding how to introduce the concept of his parents' and sister's absence as Noah's understanding increased. The media interest in their story eventually subsided, though occasional requests still came for interviews or book deals. William declined them all, protecting Noah's privacy while carefully preserving the full story in a journal he maintained for Noah to read when he was older. William included everything: the tragic accident, Max's extraordinary rescue, and the legal battle that followed, believing Noah deserved the complete truth of his survival when he was ready to comprehend it. In October, exactly 6 months after the accident, William received an unexpected letter. The return address showed it was from Michael Reeves, now serving an 18-month sentence for negligent driving resulting in death. William hesitated before opening it, uncertain what Michael could possibly say that hadn't already been expressed. Inside was a simple card containing a newspaper clipping and a brief note in Michael's handwriting. Mr. Anderson, I thought you should see this. It doesn't change anything, but perhaps it might bring some small measure of peace to know that Max's story continues to make a difference. With respect and gratitude, Michael. The clipping described the founding of Max's Heroes, a new program training rescue dogs specifically for wilderness search and recovery operations in the Blue Ridge Mountains. The program had been established using donations inspired by Max's story, with several dogs already successfully placed with rescue teams throughout the region. William carefully added the clipping to Noah's journal, a tangible reminder that even the darkest tragedy could spark positive change. That evening, as he sat with Noah on the bench in Max's garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, William felt a moment of perfect clarity. The path ahead would not be easy. Raising a child never was, especially under these circumstances, but they would walk it together, supported by Max's enduring legacy of loyalty and love. 5 years later, William and Noah returned to the crash site in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Noah, now 6 years old and understanding more about his history, placed wildflowers at the roadside memorial for his parents and sister. Then he turned to William, his young face serious but composed. "Grandpa," he said thoughtfully, "do you think Max knew he was saving me?" William considered the question carefully before answering. "I believe he did, Noah. Some connections go beyond what we can explain. Max loved you, and that love was stronger than anything else, stronger than fear, stronger than pain, stronger even than his own survival." Noah nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. As they walked back to their car, Noah's small hand in William's weathered one, a German shepherd from a nearby search and rescue training exercise, bounded past. Noah watched the dog with fascinated recognition, not of Max specifically, but of something essential. They shared a spirit of devotion that transcended ordinary understanding. "Max's Heroes," Noah said, reading the vest the dog wore. "That's us too, isn't it, Grandpa? We're keeping his story alive." William squeezed his grandson's hand gently. "That's exactly right, Noah, and we always will. Life's truest heroes often walk on 4 legs, reminding us that love knows no boundaries. Max's extraordinary sacrifice for baby Noah speaks to the unbreakable bonds we forge with those we cherish, whether human or animal. In our golden years, as we reflect on life's journey, these bonds become our most treasured legacy. They remind us that even in our darkest moments, when we lose loved ones or face impossible challenges, connection and devotion light our path forward. William Anderson found strength to build a new life with his grandson because of one loyal dog's courage. As we navigate our own twilight years, perhaps this is what matters most, not the titles we earned or possessions we accumulated, but the lives we touched and the loyalty we inspired. Max's story teaches us that our capacity to love and protect others is our most enduring gift, one that continues long after we're gone, just as his legacy lived on through Max's Heroes and in Noah's heart. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.